Hey songwriters, welcome back to another video here at Home Songwriting. This is a live recording of one of our live workshops that we do on a monthly basis. Sometimes we do it more than once a month, but this is through our meetup group. If you'd like to join live, click the link in the description and join the group. But today we're going to be talking about lyrical rhythm matching. And this sounds very intriguing, but sometimes it can be a little bit on the dull side, but it does help take you from the amateur level to an expert level in songwriting, because it makes a huge difference in how your verses match, how your lyrics match the melody. It's kind of a hidden skill that a lot of people don't work on. So today we're going to give you some information about how to do some exercises to improve your songwriting at kind of this small level that will have big returns, big ROI. So let's jump in and talk about lyrical rhythm matching. Let's go. Whether you are writing full songs, like if you're writing lyrics and music, or if you're just writing lyrics, the rhythm patterns are very important to build rhythmic structure that translates over to melodic structure and melodic rhythm. So if you're not really thinking about lyrical rhythm patterns, it's really something that you should start to focus on. And this is like your path to writing a lot better songs. And it's also something that's going to take practice. And like I said, it's not that glamorous. And I say this because I tried to ignore this for a long time, and a lot of what I learned in Berkeley has to do with these lyrical rhythm patterns, and I tried to avoid it. I tried to pretend like it didn't apply to me, but the more I kind of did this and the more I accepted it, it actually has improved my writing. So hopefully if you feel like, I don't need to do this, hopefully you work past that feeling. This is an important skill that a lot of us might do somewhat by ear and by feeling, but we're going to look deeper into the technical side and really take time to show you how to get your song setting apart from other writers. So what is lyrical rhythm? So Wikipedia had some great sections that I just kind of copied on here because I thought they explained it very well. So the English language consists of sentences, which are made up of phrases, which are made up of words, and then words are made up of syllables. So there's two types of syllables. There's stressed and unstressed. And it can also be referred to as strong and weak. So a stress is an accentuation or emphasis in a word. So that's kind of the basis of what we're going to talk about, is stressed and unstressed syllables. So what is the lyrical rhythm? It's an organized pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables that create rhythms in poetry and lyric writing. So that's what creates the meter. It creates the flow and kind of the shape of the language. So parts of speech, you have stressed and unstressed syllables that are not only identifiable in regards to the shape of the language, but also they're identified by the function of the words. So different parts of speech carry different levels of meaning and therefore are stressed differently. So this comes into play when you are singing your songs and when you're making melodies and you're putting unstressed, unimportant words on important notes. And when you listen to hit songs or pro-level songs, there are very few times where there's an unimportant word put on to an important beat or an important part of a melody. The craft comes into making sure that the words that hold meaning are on beats that hold the most meaning. So words that carry the most meaning in the language, and these serve the function of delivering a message, those are nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So these types of words are almost always stressed or have stresses in them because they hold the meaning of what you are saying. So that's something to keep in mind as we're doing these exercises today. Is it a noun? Is it a verb? Is it an adjective? Adverbs? What does that look like? Also, words that don't hold meaning and they don't really have that powerful, they're more of like a clarifying function in language. Those are the articles of like the, an, also conjunctions of the ands, the buts, the yets, the ifs, the ors. Also prepositions. I know this sounds like grammar class, but the in, on, at, to, into, before, therefore, and then also pronouns a lot of times are not stressed, so they don't hold a whole lot of meaning. So grammatical functions, are just providing clarity. Therefore, these words will not be stressed in looking at stressed and unstressed syllables. So these words function to support the words that are the meaning words, if that makes sense. So there are exceptions to this. So the guideline, particularly if you're dealing with contrast. So these sentences give you some examples of the contrast when it's appropriate to stress some of these words. Like if you say, I said I loved you and not him, the you and the him would be stressed because you're using that to focus on those words. Or run to him, not past him. The to and the past would be stressed in that situation. Also, if you said something like the pancakes were mine, not yours, those would be stressed words. So there are times where it does make sense because that's the way that the language is putting emphasis on those words. Any questions so far? I know this is kind of grammar class type stuff that, like I said, it's not the glamorous side of songwriting, but it's definitely important. So why does this matter? Why are you thinking about this, in your songwriting? So misstressed lyrics in a song that take away from the natural flow of the lyrics, they will cause distraction, they'll cause confusion, they might cause misunderstanding, and most importantly, it loses emotion. So it takes your listener out of your song because it sounds unnatural to them. So it loses that emotion and loses that relatability. Stephen had a question of what do we do with contractions? Contractions are usually like a verb, right? So like I won't, which is like a will not. So it's usually like a stressed, unstressed pattern, or it's just stressed if it's like can't, because can is a verb. Pierre says, are these throwaway words or fluff words that we can delete when rewriting? Yeah, I mean, you want it to be natural like you would say it, but the key here is you could throw it away, but more importantly is don't put the stresses in the melody on those unstressed words. Adam says, but if they're necessary and they're on a beat, sound like nails on a chalkboard. Or if they, do you mean if they're not necessarily? Not necessary, Adam?
I can't scroll the question now all of a sudden.
Oh,
Are these are these the throwaway words or fluff words that we can delete when rewriting, which I think we were talking about in the last workshop. And I just said yes, those are if they're not necessary, but a lot of the times these words are necessary for clarity and to sound like English. So if they are necessary, like this stuff is like my biggest pet peeve. So I'm really happy that you're addressing it. But yeah, I'm just saying that if you need an or the, but, or and, or whatever, and it falls on a beat but there's a word that's really important, especially a verb. I mean, verbs on the beat are like really impactful.
yes. So like
Yeah.
like if you're starting on the downbeat, you're not going to say the like that does like
So
that's you would want to either like push it past the downbeat so it would be on the and, so the is on a weak beat, so it's on kind of the offbeat, or you do it before as like a pickup. Like if you're saying the horse, you wouldn't go the horse. The shouldn't be on shouldn't be stressed. So that shouldn't be on a strong beat because you're wasting the impact of the downbeat, because the downbeat is the strongest stressed part of a melody, right? So it's the way that, and if you're just writing lyrics, you can start your line with the, but when it's set to music, who's ever setting it to music, if that's you or someone else, they shouldn't have that the on the strong beat. And that's what Adam is saying, where when you hear songs that have those words accented, it sounds, Adam said it sounds like nails on a chalkboard, but yeah, it's that weird, it just doesn't sound right, so you don't believe it. It sucks the meaning out of all of the words. Simon, you said, what's an example of a stressed versus unstressed syllable in a song? We're definitely going to get into that, so we'll have some examples of what that looks like. And then, yeah, the unconditionally, is that what you're posting, Adam? Katy Perry?
The chain to the rhythm, it's all like
Oh,
yeah, like it's just riddled with that stuff. But I've theorized, as well as others, that it's completely intentional because that's part of what the point of the song, I guess.
I think, yeah,
But
I think that's her shtick. I think that's a rule that
yeah,
she's trying to
especially
break.
there. Yeah.
Um, Leslie
Leslie.
says it might be fun to break all the rules and title the song Terrible Song. The problem is, though, I hear people breaking these rules not on purpose, and it's hurting their song. So it's like, it's something that people aren't necessarily paying attention to, for sure. Um, Chuck says small, seemingly unimportant words might be necessary to keep the meter of the line. Yes, but you still would not want to put that on a strong beat. They would be still in there, but it would be not on the strong beats.
Chad, oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
this is CJ. I'm calling in because I could not get that Zoom link to work. Sorry, I just couldn't do it. Um, I, I agree with you. I know what you're talking about with this, and I know it's one of Adam's big pet peeves. It drives him nuts. But I do also think that there are songs like what he was saying, change to the, Lizzo does it all the time, help you with your career just a little, and so it turns into a hook. If you do it right, it can turn into a hook to emphasize the wrong syllable.
Yes. There are some situations where when it becomes more about the melody or like the rhythm, like with Lizzo, it's much more of a percussive type performance where
Yes.
the lyrics are almost like another instrument in the song. So
Yes.
then that does
Yes,
make a
that's right.
difference. But if you are
Mhm.
talking about general like singer-songwriter songs,
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
and it makes you wonder
I hear
too,
you.
if Lizzo did. And here's the thing, there's no hard and fast rules. You can do whatever you want. If you like it, it's right. But the way that your listener takes it might be different, right? So you don't want to lose your listener and make them ignore what you're actually saying because it sounds weird to them. I think that's it'd be
Yeah.
kind of like sending a Valentine's card with like a stinky dead fish, right? Like, yeah, nice sediment, but it sucks. And that's kind of like what this is. And I just came up with that analogy on the top of my head, but I saw Richard nodding, so it might be a good one.
I think we know a little bit. I think we know a little bit more about Chad right now than we did previously.
So Brian says, so the kick or the snare do you come in on? And Adam's answer, he says the kick or the snare placement, while often right on the beat, are not what you would follow for this, just the beat. So when you're talking about musical beats and what is the strongest beats, your downbeat is the one, right? So if you're in 4/4 time, you have one. That's the most strong beat. No other beat in that measure has a stronger stress than your downbeat. So being cautious of what you're putting on that first beat makes a big difference. Your second most powerful beat is the 3, and your weakest beats are the 2 and the 4. So it goes strong, weak, which if you were doing kick and snare, if your kick's on the 1 and the 3s and your snare's on the 2 and the 4s, then yes, that would be strong, weak, strong, weak. So that is a good way to sort of like think about it at the kind of the base level. So the stressed beats are the 1, 2, 3, and 4, but the least stressed are the 2 and the 4. Stu says, is that the same in all genres? Yes. And it's the same in all time signatures as well. Your downbeat is always the strongest beat, and the pattern is always strong, weak. Or if you're in 3/4, if you're in 3/4 time, it's strong, weak, strong, weak. And in 6/8, it's strong, weak, strong, weak. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So your strongest beats are the 1 and the 4 when you're in the 6/8 time. Hopefully that makes sense. So moving on with the lyrical focus. So the lyrical rhythm is directly connected to the melodic rhythm. So it's how the words are sung. And I think the way that a lot of us write songs, especially when we're starting, is we just write lyrics in a poetry form. We're not thinking about the rhythm of the lines. We're just writing it, or we're writing it to like common meter, like the Mary had a little lamb, fleece was white as snow, da 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 da, which is great. But then you have to start thinking about how does that connect to the melody. And a lot of times I hear songwriters, every time they're singing their song, it sounds like they're just improvising it because they haven't thought about how the melody and the words go together. And I know that a lot of you are probably guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. But what we're trying to do is teach you a way to sort of get out of that pattern. Also, song sections that have the same function, which means your verses have a function, your chorus have a function, bridges have a function, all those things. Usually songs that have the same function will match rhythmically and melodically. There's a little bit of variation between verses, but most of the time your verses should match pretty closely because it helps your listener remember your song, and it brings the sense of tension and release because you're building tension in the verse, you're releasing some of that in the chorus, and then you're coming back to that tension that's familiar to them that they sensed in the first verse. So matching your verse to verse can help you have your melodies sing better. It helps you remember your songs better. And most importantly, it brings familiarity and memorability to the listener as well. So have you ever had to like squish or rush words when you're singing songs and you're like, these lines have the same syllables, but they don't sing the same? Because I see a lot of songwriters really counting syllables, right? They think, well, line 1 in my verse 1 has the same number of syllables in my, verse 2, line 1, but they don't sing the same. Well, this is where the lyrical rhythm pattern matters more than the number of syllables. And so trying to remember how your lyrics flow, we can help you get rid of some of that by focusing on the patterns. And again, the goal is to maintain the natural shape and the rhythm of language to keep it believable. Richard said, hallelujah. Stephen says, isn't it the stress syllables count versus the total syllables? For the most part, yes. So when you're talking about your lines, you're talking about how many stress syllables there are. But again, even that can be misleading too, because the rhythm could be extremely different between the stress syllables and the non-stress syllables, to where, yes, they may have the same number of stresses, but it still doesn't sing the same because the stresses of the melody are different than what the lyric would be. So when we're talking about stress patterns, one way, and how I learned through Berkeley, is the stressed patterns, you can say it with a dum. So that's a strong stressed pattern. The unstressed is da. So Mary had a little lamb is dum da dum da dum da da, or dum da dum da dum da dum. So Lauren says, can a good singer make the lyric fit the melody with good timing? Not, I mean, yes, good singers can make crappy songs sound good, but it's still like you want your song to be stronger than this, and you want to write your song, not your singer. Like you should not be writing your songs to have someone else finish it for you. Like you should know how your song goes before you give it to a singer, because then they're just letting them kind of ad lib. Now, singers will kind of add their own spin to different things, but the majority of what you're doing should be focused on getting the song to be how the song is. It's like a cover song. You ever hear somebody do a cover and they take kind of liberty to make it like too much their own, and you're like, well, screw that, that's not the song anymore. That's kind of what you're asking a singer to do if you're not focusing on some of these things. So if you look,
Chad,
yeah.
I was just thinking of myself of a song that I wrote and gave to a really good singer songwriter, and she put some words in that were like you really had to get them in fast. She wrote it, she added it to my song, and she recorded my song. But when I tried to sing it the way she did, I couldn't do it. But when she sang it, the lyrics fit in well. That was the kind of idea. I mean, it's not a common thing. And she added the lyrics herself. But the way she's such a skilled singer, it fit well. Whereas I think if you read it on the page or read it out loud like a poem, it would not have. But I think that's rare. That's the kind of thing I was thinking about.
But I think that's an example of the lyrical rhythm wasn't as strong because she had to sort of make it her own to where it's not the same if you sing it or if she sings it. So it's kind of like a different song in a way. Ron.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I think now you're getting out of the realm of singing and songwriting, and now you're into production where you're actually changing the song. So it's kind of a different subject, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing is, I hear a lot of singers and songwriters do this where every time they sing the song, it's kind of a little bit of a different melody. And the reason why that is they're not taking the time to create the melodic motif. They're not taking the time to focus on the rhythm patterns to make it fit the way that it should. And I think that's why when you hear songs written by very experienced songwriters, the weirdness is gone. Like you experience the song more than you actually like listen to it, right? And these little things are like the key to doing that, and they make a huge difference. So looking at these two lines, so take you over the moon again, and if I was a dreamer, I would. Both of these lines have the same number of syllables. They both have 8 syllables, but their patterns are different. So if you were going to sing these songs or these lines, they won't sing the same. So the rhythm of the first line is dum da dum da da dum da dum. So take is stressed, you is unstressed, over is dum da because it's over. It's not over. And then it's the is unstressed, which is this, and then moon is stressed, and then again is unstressed, stressed. So you have the dum da dum da da dum da dum. But the next line has 2 unstressed syllables followed by this verb, which is stressed. Is unstressed. Dreamer is stressed, unstressed. It's not dreamer. It's, and then I unstressed, and then would, the verb. So there's your stress. So the lines have completely different patterns. The second one is da da dum da dum da da dum. And the first one was dum da dum da da dum da dum. So even though they have the same syllables, they are not going to fit the melody the same. And if you sung the second line by starting on the downbeat, it would sound weird. So Stu says, I'd stress I in the second line, but it's because I'm not from the US. There are some language differences, I think, the way that people accent certain words. So it's definitely possible too. Brian says, does switching chords in the middle of a count after the way you say your phrase, harmonizing with your chords? What we're talking about doesn't necessarily have anything to do with chord changes necessarily. Chord changes you can, I mean, it depends on what you're wanting to highlight. Adam said that too. Like chord changes will highlight certain words. So a lot of times you might want to have the you know, if you're going to like a really different chord, or if you're changing chords on like a off beat, it may kind of stress something that doesn't need to be stressed. But what has more important, rhythm has more importance over pitch or harmony. So having a note being higher is not actually accenting it as much as the rhythm is. So rhythm is heavier than the pitch when you come to melodies. Karen says the second line, if I were saying it, I would emphasize I instead of was. Was is a, yeah, you could do it that way. If I, but then it would, actually it should be if I were a dreamer, I would. Richard.
I was just going to get to that same point. Is like you had mentioned it before, where sometimes words that typically are unstressed become stressed for the sake of creating a certain contrast or emphasizing a focus in a sentence. So like Stu was saying, he would deliver the line as, if I was a dreamer, I would dream every night, as opposed to, if I was a dreamer, I would dream of this other thing. So it's like, that's the key.
But see,
and it's also like, I was just thinking about how, in a way, we're kind of like, our brains easily conflate the difference between like the language defines clearly where natural stresses are, but then it is, as like a musical convention, we can use accents. And that's what like mumble rap does. They're choosing to always accent like the last 3 syllables of every line, or like the Lizzo song we referenced, where that's not stress. Those aren't language stresses. Those are musical accents that she's doing, like career. If you asked her, like, she doesn't walk around all day and say like my career every time she says the word career. Or maybe she does. Maybe
she might.
Wrong, yeah, she could. But it's like, you know, musically accenting. You could have 8 stressed beats in your line if you wanted, or 8 accented, you know, like notes. But the language would still tell you that's not a stressed line, even though you're accenting it. You know, it's like melody versus lyric. There's whatever, blah, 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 blah.
But see, here's the thing that you guys are picking up on. The accents change the meaning, right? So if you are accenting the wrong word melodically, you are changing the meaning of the lyrics, whether you know it or not. So in these lines, if we said, take you over the moon, that means we are taking you instead of someone else, right? That implies that we're taking you over the moon, not someone else. So that changes the meaning compared to if we said the same line, take you over the moon, right? Like not any moon, the moon. It becomes that contrast and comparison, right? So looking at your lines and what words you are putting on strong beats changes the meaning of what you're trying to say. So that's where this becomes, how are you trying to deliver the message? So there are more than one way to deliver lines, but are you doing it consciously and purposefully, or are you just trying to sing it because you have to improv it at your gig, right? So yeah, Richard says writing on purpose, not by channeling. Exactly. Like that's where people are saying, well, I would stress the I, you know, but what if you stress the if? If I was a dreamer, I would. Because then you're saying, I'm not. Do you know what I mean? And you're also kind of saying that too, if you say, if I was a dreamer, I would. You're saying, yeah, you're probably not gonna, but I'm going to, right? So it changes. So even the words say the exact same thing, but the way that you are placing them changes the meaning. And that is prosody. And that is why these things matter and why you should think about the emotion that you're trying to communicate. Adam.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, if I may, just kind of piggybacking on what's being said now and then going back to when you said it may feel like English class today or whatever, and over analyzing these things, I'm sure you and I would both agree it can seem like it's taking the fun out of it. But I think the best way, or at the end of the day, I mean, you could look at everything with a magnifying glass and make it really, really impactful. But it depends on if you sing as spoken, that should iron out a lot of these issues, which is what we're saying now, like how you would say it. The realest songs are the best songs. So if something is, if you can imagine something coming out of your mouth in conversation and you want to put that in your song, well, try and make it flow with its melody the way it would be spoken, even with the rise and falls of the notes, even. I mean, but obviously we're not doing that today, but it's all related to just natural, conversation.
But yes, exactly. And that's the key too, is because sometimes you're writing from a melody first, right? You might have a melody that pops into your mind. So then the melody naturally has strong and weak notes. So that's where you want to match the strong and weak notes with strong and weak syllables in the lyric, right? And because that will keep the natural shape of the language. But what Adam said, like sing it as you would speak it, that's breaking it down to the base concept of you want the stressed syllables to match the stressed parts of the melody, and the stressed parts of the melody are on the stressed beats or the strong beats. So that's and it's kind of heady when you think about it, and that's why it takes a while for this to like sort of like make sense. So I don't think you're going to walk away from this workshop saying like, I totally get it. Like, I think you need to keep thinking about it as you are writing and see how it affects your writing. J-Rock.
Hey, yeah. So, quick question. Is there a best practice for writing like to a melody, or can you come up with the melody later after you've got words in rhythm? What's, how do people usually do that?
Both ways. You have a lot of writers that are writing to like a track, or they're writing to a melody line that like a top liner comes up with, or maybe you come up with yourself. There's other times where you're setting lyrics to a melody. So there are ways that you can do it both ways. So you and like if you had a melody, right? So like let's say the melody, the rhythm was la 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 la. So it's la 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 la. So it's dum da dum da dum. So you would want your lyric then to be strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, because that's the rhythm of the melody. So a lot of times when you're writing from a melody to lyric, you're not necessarily thinking about pitch, you're thinking about rhythm, because the pitch can be adjusted, but the rhythm is what really holds the meat of what you're doing, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you watch like when you see some of the videos online of like Ryan Tedder or like Louis Bell, like a lot of those guys that are writing hit pop songs, they're writing melody first. And then what they're using kind of the Jeff Tweedy mumble singing method, which is a great way where you take the logic out of the lyric part and you sing just like mumble singing over like a chord progression, and then you fit that rhythm to the lyrics, if that makes sense. But you can also do it the other way too, where you're doing lyrics first, right? So now you would know that first line would be dum da dum da da dum da dum. So you could see like, okay, well, this should be on a stronger beat, weaker beats, and how you would sing it. But you would sing it with like the same rhythm pattern as you would speak it. So it's take me over the moon again. Dum da dum da da dum da dum. So that's your melody then would be da 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 da. Or da 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 da. So you can make it faster or slower, but you're still hitting strong and weak beats, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Like I get the both ideas because I heard a lot of people say, you know, they just come up with the melody and try to come up with words afterwards.
Yep.
And even like, you know, top 40 Max Martin type of people, you know, they're like, oh yeah, the melody's the most important thing. So I understand. And it's just, I could do it with the band. I don't know, like when I'm doing my own stuff, like when I'm writing my own stuff, I think the band already had music, so I had to like work with whatever they had. But if I do my own stuff, I usually am trying to, I write out words and I want that to fit to a song.
So with this, I see in the chat, Brian says, so basically we have to look at every word to see if it's stressed or not. It would take a long time to finish writing. That's not the point of this. So we're looking at the mechanics of why it works, but really the key is go by the feeling. Does the shape of what you're singing match the way that you would speak it, right? So I don't want you to get caught up in this concept of having to look at every syllable all the time. But I think until you get the concept and understand how lyrics relate to melody, I think it does help to understand what's going on at kind of this very microscopic like level, right? So a lot of this you do by feeling. And Brian says it's phrasing. Exactly. It's how you are phrasing a line in relationship to the rhythm. So yeah, phrasing would be another way to put it for sure.
And you know, when you listen to people like Frank Sinatra or Bob Dylan, their phrasing is impeccable. That's what I was trying to say, and I didn't say it very well with my comment. This person who changed my song, she made it more meaningful by putting in a lot of words in a very restricted area, perhaps 2 bars that had fewer words, and it sounded great. But I couldn't get the phrasing. A lot of times, I'll just mention, I don't know how much time we're allowed to talk, but just for a half a minute. Often I will sing the lyrics again and again once I have the melody and lyrics, and it's spontaneous. I might do it for an hour, and spontaneously my brain will come up with lyrics which may or may not fit, but I'll write them down and I'll use them to mine the lyrics to make the song better.
Yeah, I mean, repeating a melody or repeating a pattern, that's exactly how you can, you know, get your mind to start thinking about lyrics and stuff too, for sure. All right, so I did find a video from American Songwriter, which is a magazine, but they had a video from a pro songwriter in Nashville that I thought he explains what we're talking about and gives an example of how changing the lyrical rhythm can actually make his song worse, and you can kind of use it back and forth. But I thought this would be a good way to show you kind of this concept. And let me make sure that I'm sharing my audio, because I don't know if I did that earlier. Here we go. Go back. So this kind of explains in a short video what we're talking about as well.
Stress syllable count I have to talk a lot about, and it's really difficult to make this clear when you're reading a lyric, because you can do so much within the melody to make things like this work. And the stress syllable count is just that boom, that the movement of the song. It's like when you're on a highway and it's like ba-boom, 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 when you get to like the ridges of the concrete highway. I don't know, that's what I'm picturing. The stress syllable count can do that too. The same way that rhymes can create patterns and expectation, the stress syllable count can do that too. It's a way of organizing the way things fall so it feels familiar, so that it's just kind of easing your listener into this comfortable sort of pattern of syllables. So this is my song Armadillo, and the only reason I'm not using the other songs is that this is just easier. I know this song very well. And this uses a 3-3-4-3 groove, meaning on the first line I've got these 3 stressed syllables. When the standing joke just stares. On the next one, it's another three stressed syllables, making faces at the mirror. The next one is 4 stressed syllables. That's the underlined part. While your nose and ears count the years and you're stuck on what to wear. So 3, 3, 4, 3. And if I read it the way it sounds with the little bit of a beat, when the standing joke just stares, making faces at the mirror. While your nose and ears count the years and you're stuck on what to wear. It's just that you start to understand that that's the pattern, okay? So if I were to screw with it and make something that didn't quite feel right, that's what the bottom part does, and it's just going to sound wacky. But when the standing joke just stares at you, making funny faces at you at the mirror, while your nose and your ears keep counting all the years and you can't decide what to wear. That's meant to sound ridiculous. But I did that because I want to show you that a little tweak of it can make it feel more like a groove, okay? So if I'm talking about stress syllable count here, that's what I'm talking about. It's difficult to show you, but when we start doing more in it, I may move some stuff around and when we do the critique, and that may help you.
So I thought that was a great demonstration to show how this makes sense in kind of a real world application. He wasn't sitting down and saying, he's sensing what words should be stressed. It's again, it was mostly the verbs, the nouns, the words that actually mattered. And in the second version, he was adding words that didn't carry meaning, and all of a sudden it was more garbled. It didn't flow as well. So that's how the lyric and melodic flow kind of work together. And I think some of us write, we're either doing music first or we're doing lyrics first. One habit to kind of get into is do it at the same time, right? Like be working on your lyrics while you're coming up with the melody too. Like a true song is the marriage of all those things. A true song is lyrics matched with melody, matched with chords, matched with groove, right? So it's not that you're writing each thing separate and then fitting it to the other. It should all be like, mixed in the same bowl as if you're making like dough for like pizza, right? You're adding the flour and the water and the salt and the butter or whatever you're adding to it. Like mixing it together to see if it's working. And that's what kind of the songwriting process should be. So again, this first part, I know we were in the weeds, so some of you are going like, whoa, like crap, I don't know if I can think this way. I just want to show you the theory and the technique that's underneath of it. So when you are writing, you can think about it. Richard.
Sorry, my mute button got stuck there. Yeah, Chad nailed it. It's like that idea, like you can't write a song that has no rhythm. So that's why it's important to understand how rhythm works. You can't write a song that doesn't have a meter. So it's important to understand how meter works. Not because you need to overthink it, but because if you're ever stuck, you go, what is it about my song I don't like? And then you can realize, oh, it's that my high point of my melodies is landing on the word the, and that's making it feel lame. I just wanted to share a quick example. Like I've been thinking a lot about the difference between syllable and stress and stuff like that through like the haiku pattern. Cause like probably a lot of us, I grew up in the Western education system, learning that it's 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. Turns out that's not how the Japanese think about it at all. But an example, so to use those strict syllable counts in your favor, you could write something like walking down the street, city lights and atmosphere, Minneapolis. And that feels so coherent, right? We go, oh yeah. But then if you stick to counting syllables, you end up with things like, this is counting the syllables because we want to be weirdos now. And it's like, that's, yeah, it fits the form, but you're being kind of like facetious. It's almost being like I don't know, I almost said a bad word, but you're kind of being like, you're being goofy for no reason. It's not telling you like, you got to smush them in and fit the syllable count. It's how to make the syllable count feel poetic or feel beautiful, feel meaningful, not about forcing it in to fit for the sake of making it fit.
It's how you would say it. It's think about your song as if you are standing next to someone, your listener, and you're telling them a story. Like, you wouldn't have weird accents on words that didn't matter. You know, they would look at you and be like, what are you on? And that's what happens when we write songs, because we don't think about songs as communication or conversation. We think about songs as we're trying to write a song. But I think if you're trying to write a song, I think you're already starting off on the wrong foot, because you're wanting to communicate a story or emotion. And the choices you make will decide if you do that effectively or if you don't, right? So I think that's true. Lauren, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I have a question for you. You know, when we're doing these exercises in general, and breaking down the songs, I think of when I was learning how to ski. You know, you'd be able to ski, then you'd be with an expert instructor, and he said, "Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to check your balance. You're going to ski on one ski and no poles, and then you usually can't do it because you're not a great skier, but a great skier can because he's balanced." So what I'm trying to say is, when you do these exercises, do you think people will get a little unbalanced, which is good? Is that good? Because you're really tearing it apart, you're analyzing it, and then in the end, you're not going to write a song like that. You're not going to, when you're actually writing a song, this is what I'm trying to say, Chad, you're not going to be thinking in all these particulars. It's all going to be there because you've broken it down and put it back together. Or is there another idea that you have?
No, that's exactly it, Lauren. So, like, when we're doing these exercises, we're not teaching you to get a result. We're teaching you a process that you apply when it's time to write. So, Lauren, you're exactly right. So, skiing on one ski isn't teaching you how to go down the mountain, right? That's teaching you like balance. So, you're working on balance. What these exercises do is you're working on rhythm, you're working on stressed syllables. So that becomes a tool in your toolbox when it does come time to write your song. That way you're not having to think about it, like you said. It's like driving a stick. I don't know if any of you have learned how to drive a stick, but when you first drive a stick, you kill that car quite a bit because you don't know quite when to push the clutch. And if you let it out too fast, you'll kill the car. And like, you have to get the dance down. What we're learning is the steps, right? And then eventually it comes together when you actually apply it. And I was watching on HBO Max, they have a documentary about Shaq. I'm not a sports person, but I was completely enthralled in this 4-part Shaq documentary. I don't know if you've seen it, but they were talking about running exercises before big games. And what helped them win the games was doing exercises that got their skill level up. And I think that applies to songwriting so much, because learning and sort of practicing the skill will help you when it comes time to actually delivering. So great point, Lauren, for sure. CJ, did you have something?
Yeah. When I am interested in writing what I think is a commercial song, I'll go through the the current like top 20 or top 40 country list, and sometimes I go through the pop list, but I usually listen to all the top 20 in country, and I try to identify what the rhythms are in the different sections, and that's my starting point always, because that to me is number one. It shows me what is currently being bought. And number two, it just kind of gets me in the mood to figure out, like, I always try to think, I think it's a very good skill to be able to identify what those rhythms are. And it's really changed a lot over the last 5 years of country. It's become, it's just like slow, slow, quick, quick, slow, 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 quick, quick, slow. And it's just like, if I can I don't actually count the actual number of the beats, but you can get into a rhythm that way and very easily start to write that way.
Excellent point, CJ, because that is a great way to learn what the structure of effective songs are like. And you can take the rhythm and add your own notes, and it becomes a completely different song. So there's nothing against writing to the rhythm of another song. And I think it's a great way to practice. So you do get used to what feels natural. And CJ brings up brings up a point too. Like there are trends that change in music. Like what was happening in the 1980s is different than what's happening today, right? So if you are trying to write commercially, it is good to know the trends and kind of know what people are, like relating to and what sounds current. Because a lot of times, especially, I know a lot of us are just doing this as a hobby, but if you are trying to write commercially or trying to get published, you'll get feedback that says your song sounds dated, and they'll say, well,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Well, a lot of times it has to do with the melody and the way that the phrasing is, because that changes over time. So yeah, so knowing what's happening really gets you a little deeper into this, so you can sort of adjust your writing to what fits you for sure.
I just want to add one thing, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Which is that, because people say, oh, don't write in the current style because, you're going to be chasing a trend, and then, by the time your song gets out there, it'll be old. But what you can do is you can take that information that you get from the current patterns that are popular. You can extrapolate on that and add something in. And what's that guy's name? He's an African-American country guy, Kane something. Adam, do you know who I'm talking about? Kane somebody?
Kane Brown.
Kane Brown, right. And that's, I think, his style is like he takes something that is very, trending, very mainstream, and then adds in like a bunch of flavor of his own thing or what his identity is, and it becomes the next thing. So don't stop with what's trending now. Add your own thing, whether it's rap or whether it's jazz or whatever it is, and that becomes the next thing.
Yeah, so I had a friend who was an inventor, and he invented different things, and he had some products that he invented that became pretty successful and all these things. And one of the things that he always said was, when you have the moments when you hear something and you say, well, I've done that before, like that's something that I've done before, that's a sign that you're on the edge of being ahead of the curve. Like what CJ's saying is, like, sometimes you have to know the curve before you can get ahead of it. And CJ's right. If you're writing to what's on the radio or writing what's popular now, those songs, it took probably 2-3 years to get where they are right now. So they are old.
Yeah.
New to us, but old in what writers are doing. But like what CJ's saying is, if you can get to that place, you can then get further because you can add your own spin to it and be more original, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
No, awesome point. So I'm going to go back here and share my screen again. So now we're going to get into the exercises. So this is where you guys get to try matching some of these syllables and trying to put this into practice for a while here today. So the first exercise, and I'll give you a few minutes to do this, but write down, what is the stress pattern of this line? So the line is, the snow fell on an empty street. So take what we talked about, what words are holding meaning, what syllables, and that's the thing, is like different syllables hold meaning the way that you say them, but how would you write this in the dum-da pattern? So what would be the lyrical pattern of the dum-da stressed and unstressed syllables for this line? And then we'll come back and I'll pick on some of you and pull up what you had done and see how you did. So we'll just, any questions on this right now? Cool. All right. So take a couple minutes and write down the stress pattern of this line. And you can put yours in the chat too. That might be an easy way to put it in there too. And Adam, the doo-wah ditties don't count. All right. So how are we doing on this? Is everybody kind of getting there? Richard, you have your hand raised.
I'll just share while people are kind of finishing up. If you think this is annoying and kind of heady, I assure you that you're barely scratching the surface of the iceberg. If you really want to get freaked out about how what we're talking about really, really plays out, there's this book called The Language Instinct by Steven Pinker, and it goes real deep into like why does the snow fell on an empty street maybe feel like it should stress different for some of us. Like, so Steven just did it, right? The dumb, he wanted fell to have that, the emphasis as a verb. But for myself, you know, when I sketched out the stresses, it was the snow fell on an empty street, and fell was sort of unstressed, because even though it's important that snow is falling, the way my brain was trying to convey or pull meaning out of that statement, it was more about the snow and the empty street. That's what my brain wants. Those are the two kind of like chunks that my brain is playing with and trying to understand how they relate to one another. And fell is the linking verb that connected them. But if you're emphasizing just the falling, I don't care where it's falling or what's falling, fall is the point, then you're going to have to stress the verb fell, or you're going to lose your meaning. Blah, blah, blah. This, yeah, if you want to be a nerd, go read this, and then you'll realize that this is actually like, this is fine. We're okay here.
Yeah. No, I mean, it does matter how you want to deliver the line, because if you said the snow fell on the empty street, you know, from a musical standpoint, you could do, you know, like the snow fell on an could be a pickup, and then empty would be your downbeat. You know, the snow fell on an empty street. The snow fell on an empty street, right? That's different than the snow fell on an empty street. The snow fell on an empty street. But what if I do the on the downbeat? The snow fell on an empty street. The snow fell on an empty street. No, that sounds dumb. Do you know what I mean? So that's why it matters. But so how I would do this, and you can compare it to, you know, depending on what how you're singing it. But based on the rules and kind of the concept that we talked about at the beginning, this is how I would stress it: it's da dum dum da da dum da dum, because it's the isn't stressed. Snow fell, noun verb. On and doesn't carry meaning. Empty is dum da, and then street is a noun, so it's accented. So I would have da dum dum da da dum da dum. The snow fell on an empty street. But you can set it to music in different ways, but it just depends on, make sure that you're not, the snow fell on an empty street and not falling off the empty street, right? So if you accented the on, it changes the meaning of it. So what Richard's saying and what we're all saying is, be cautious of what you're putting on the strong beats. And strong beats a lot of times will show up instinctively if you're writing to a melody. So that's where you want to line up the syllables. So I saw some of you had, I saw someone had it the way that I had it. I think Stu did. Stu had it. Jay, you almost had it. You have empty as two stress syllables though. Empty.
Yeah, I caught
Empty.
that after I read yours. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But see, that's where you could make just a small adjustment in the way that you're singing something. Like if you are accenting that second syllable in empty, you could add just a little bit more believability to what you're saying if you pull that off of a strong beat.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I guess I just heard it differently in my head. So yeah, I get it. Thank you.
Lauren, you have your hand raised.
Yeah.
I didn't get the dum dum thing that well, so I just put the emphasis on fell and street. But I was thinking too that it matters. We don't have a melody, and we don't have a line before, and we don't have a line after. And so I wrote, "The snow fell on an empty street. I knew well where to plant my feet," because that seemed to be the meaning. This, it seemed to work with me because to me, I don't know if you can comment on this. We don't have a rhythm, we don't have a melody, we don't have a riff. We've just got one line. The emphasis would depend on what you're trying to say and what the meaning of the song is. So if I put a second line after, I know well where to plant my feet. That gives me an indication of where to put the emphasis. And I was thinking of this song, I just got it, "On the street where you live. I have often walked down the street before, but the pavement always stayed beneath my feet before." Walked and stayed seem to be the way I remember it in My Fair Lady. So that's my comment. Do you have any comment about that, about the context, there being no context? Does that affect where you're going to go with the emphasis?
It doesn't, from the perspective of the parts of speech don't change, right? So the way that you accent the words doesn't change. But what you said, I knew well where to plant my feet. So you matched this line. The stress syllables were the same. So the snow fell on an empty street. I knew well where to plant my feet. That's balanced. The pattern matches. So there's no forward movement in what you just did because it balances it and it resolves. So that sounds complete, right, Lauren? So if you say the snow fell on an empty street, I knew well where to plant my feet, you could stop there and it makes sense. What if you said, so the snow fell on an empty street, I got lost. Now you're like, that feels unbalanced and like we want something else, right? So that's where you can create movement within just the structure. Even if you don't have other lines, if you don't have music, if you don't have melody, it adds that level of sort of movement through the rhythm. But Lauren, you did it naturally to where you stressed the right words with your second line. It just matched perfectly. It was the same exact pattern. So yeah, so right there, you're instinctively sensing it based on the rhythm that's already there. Cool. J-Rock.
Hey, okay, so on that same topic, when that video was, the guy was talking in the video, he was talking about the analogy of driving over concrete road, and I have a road like that here on the highway, so I definitely hear that. So like keeping that rhythm, I totally get it, but I wonder about variations now because like the whole everything resolves and everything fits on that rhythm, that pattern, and is comfortable. But what about how do you make it uncomfortable? How do you like change the journey?
So yeah, so we're actually going to do some exercises on that to kind of show that concept. Steven in the chat says, Chad, since this starts with an unstressed syllable, would you put that on a pickup, not in the measure, or on the pickup note in the measure before or start on the upbeat of the one? Either. So those are really your two options. Well, there's more than two options, but Steven, you have the right idea. So the would not start on the downbeat. It would be the snow, or it would be the snow fell on an empty street. The snow, there's a pickup, or you could go after, which is the snow fell on an empty street. So it's you're still making snow fall on one of the stronger beats, which are the 1, 2, 3s or the 4s, right? So you just want to avoid having like the be on that downbeat. But you could also have this start after the 2, right? So it'd be 1, 2, the snow fell on an empty street. The snow fell on an empty street. That has a different feel, and it, even where you're putting it in the measure, creates a different feel and a different emotion. So when you're writing, the key here, and this probably goes back to what J-Rock is saying too, is the key is to experiment and to see what happens if I sing this line as a pickup line instead of like after the 1, or what if I hold it until after the 2? Like, what is that being, what Pat Pattison would call that is back heavy. So are you front heavy or are you back heavy? Like, how does that change what you're saying? And you have to kind of listen to how that works. So Richard, you had your hand raised again.
I was gonna, yeah, totally. Like there's a great Andy Grammer interview he did on this podcast, and he talks how about when he's in co-writes with pro level writers, the one thing about them is they're never afraid to just ditch what they've got and like reset, just jump to a different thing. And in this context, like you're just saying, Chad, it's like being willing to just go, what if I just take 5 minutes out of whatever I'm doing to like break down this one line and try things, to do an experiment on this one line. So you could, this is an exercise I do, not just in songwriting, but just literally, I'll do it if I have to send an important text even sometimes. Stop yourself and repeat your line and emphasize one word each time you say it. The snow fell on an empty street. You go, that's dumb. The snow fell on an empty street. You go, huh. The snow fell on an empty street. You go, huh. The snow fell on an empty street. You go, okay, yeah. The snow fell on an. You go, that doesn't make sense. And as you keep putting, if you read the line to yourself 8 different times with one word stressed, and you go, that's the one that I mean, and now I know what my melody and my rhythm needs to convey to support what I mean, not what someone else means. Because somebody else would emphasize a different word, depending, like you're saying, Lauren, about where does the context push this line, or where has the context brought us to deliver that line. And like with all our stuff about metaphors and, you know, the key of a song or whatever lyrically, it's like, yeah, maybe fall is the most important line, but maybe snow is the most important word in that line. So you can, yeah, be super strategic about how to do it. Writing on purpose when you can, or when you're not inspired brilliantly like some of us get to be.
Well, I think I love that suggestion, Richard, because it totally, you could go line, and Pat Pattison actually suggests this. When you write a draft, go through your song line by line and see if you're phrasing it and placing it in the measure in the most effective place. Because a lot of times we're just going with what comes out naturally, and that may or may not be the most effective. So what Richard is saying is go through this line and say what word, like try it with every word like he did, and see which ones feel natural, which ones don't. Like he said, if you start the on the downbeat, it's like, that sounds weird. This, and like an doesn't make any sense either. The snow fell on an empty street. Like that just sounds goofy most of the time. So Lauren, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I write, almost always when I'm writing a song, I try to think of another song like it and listen to it. Like in my mind, it might be similar. Like I wrote a song called Springtime in Boulder, and I was thinking about a song called Someday Soon by Ian Tyson. It was made famous by Judy Collins. And I'm thinking, we're talking about timing. One of the songs that I think is amazing to listen to for timing is Mac the Knife. I'll just read the first 2 lines. Oh, the shark, babe, has such teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white. So the O is not, as you said, Chad, it's not on the first beat. It's before the first beat. And if you listen to Frank Sinatra, I mean, it's not about the music. If you listen to Dylan or Frank Sinatra or some of the jazz singers, even Tony Bennett, you listen to the way they time it, and then you try to apply that to your songs in some way. I find that helps me.
So
Anyway, Master Knife is one that really comes to mind, where the emphasis is so important and where the O's and ands are just thrown in there and they're not on the beat, they're not emphasized, they just move it forward.
so
That's
do that again, Lorne, and just say the words that are on those strong beats. There we'll still probably get meaning out of it.
shark, teeth, shows, pearly, jackknife, Macheath, keeps it, sight. Well, it's hard to do.
But you said shark,
I
teeth.
said, yeah, shark, teeth, shows, pearly, white, jackknife, Macheath, keeps, sight, out of
Yeah.
sight, out of sight.
Yeah.
But you could also, I suppose, you could also read it as we were just discussing, as Richard mentioned. You could read them say, "Oh, the shark, babe, has such teeth, dear," and it wouldn't sound very good.
It doesn't sound as believable.
No, and it doesn't flow, and that's a great song, and it's partly great because of the way he sang it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think all of you should
The
do is,
writing, though, right? It's the writing, right, Chad?
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one thing that you can do too is listen to songs that are successful and pay attention that the important words are falling on important beats, and it's something that once you do it long enough, you'll start to do it instinctively, but like I think Richard said before too, or maybe it was Adam that said when you listen back to your songs and you're like something doesn't feel right, these are things that you can look at and say, am I phrasing this or am I starting it at the right time, because it might be causing something goofy. Hazeline says, could this help me notate also where the stress notes might be quarter notes and the unstressed eighth notes? So the strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak pattern applies to every level of rhythm within a measure. So Hazeline, it's strong, weak quarter notes. So it goes strong, or strong, weak, strong, weak. In eighth notes, it's strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak. And then in 16th notes, it's strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong, weak, strong. So the way that it works out from a division standpoint applies to every level of note. So so it kind of that's where you get into, like, it's almost like the math of it is where it goes that way. So I hopefully that answers your question, Hazeline. But yeah, if you're composing, you would want to purposefully put certain notes and lyrics on the beats that are accented. Jay, you had your hand raised.
Thank you, Chad. Actually, because it seemed relevant, you mentioned something about front heavy and back heavy. And I'm wondering if that's in relation to how many of the, in this circumstance, dumbs would be contrasting the front versus the back of the das. Like if there are more dumbs in the front than the das, or vice versa. Is that what you're referring to, or are you referring to something else?
Nope. So front heavy, back heavy just applies to, are you starting your phrase before the downbeat or are you starting it after the downbeat? If you're starting it before or on, that's front heavy. If you're starting it after the downbeat, then that's back heavy.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
J-Rock, did you have your hand raised again?
Yeah. Just as a little bit of a review, but I just want to make sure I get it.
Yeah.
So when you're saying that the words like the snow, the first beat is the most powerful, accented. But can you de-accent the word in the lyric? Like instead of, even though the beat is strong, the word could be weak, like the snow fell on an empty, I'm not saying it right now. The snow fell on an empty street, so like instead of saying the snow fell on an empty street, could I, even though I'm starting on the first beat, just de-accent the way I say it? You know what I'm saying?
Um, no, that's what we're trying to avoid actually, because that's what we're saying is like that downbeat or the one
Should be strong.
should be a strong word because that's a strong beat.
I
Because
got you.
if you said, I mean, technically the way that you would, if you did say the snow or like the snow, it sounds goofy when you have those words that don't have meaning on beats that, it's like, it's kind of like the concept is don't waste a good beat, right? Like
Right, right.
put a good word on it, if that makes sense.
So can we just drop the and just say
Absolutely. Yeah, you could say snow fell on an empty street.
yeah, that's what I tend to do.
Yeah, definitely. Great question.
Thank you.
Chad?
CJ. Yeah, CJ.
Sorry, I can't raise my hand. I just have to kind of like butt in. I have a feeling, or for me, what works better than saying it makes sense is how does it feel? Because I think we can change around, and I like the idea of walking around, and that's what I do. I walk around in my kitchen, and I find that when I do my dishes, if I'm struggling with how to say something, I'll phrase it over and over and over again until it feels or sounds right to me. Just like constantly, I'll work on it. Just as I'm humming, as I'm walking around the kitchen, and it has to feel a certain way too. It doesn't have to just make sense, but it has to feel what I'm trying to convey. And so the words have to be. I like to think of it as putting the words together that way, rather than it like making sense. How does it feel to me? And the other question I have is, hey, can we do a class on the math of music? Because I don't get it, and it fascinates me.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we can take a look at how there's, different sort of division within music and things like that for sure. But to your first point, about how it feels, I think what you're saying, CJ, is you're kind of going over it until it feels the way that you want it to sound or the way that you want it to feel. And that
Yeah.
comes back to, does it have that natural sort of shape, and is it communicating what I want to say? And I think sometimes we don't take the time
Yeah.
to sit back and look at our songs and say, is this communicating what I really want to say? I think
Right, in the best, most succinct, way.
right.
That's kind of like, yeah, the language. The language is very important. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next exercise, which Lauren kind of already did, was I'd like you to try to write a matching line that has the same stressed pattern as this line. So this will be good practice for you to kind of take this da dum dum da da dum da dum and try to write a line that matches. And it doesn't have to make sense with the line before it. I just want to see that you understand the rhythm. So it could totally be a nonsense line. So don't worry about making it fit the actual line, but worry about making it fit the actual pattern. So take a few minutes and see if you can write a line that matches this one. And Lauren, you're already done. But maybe try another one. And one hint is just repeat the line over and over again until you get the sense of what the rhythm is, and then come up with a line that matches it. So Hazeline, so what we're doing is take the snow fell on an empty street and match or write a line that has that same rhythm pattern. So the dum dum da da dum da dum. The snow fell on an empty street. We'll just give it another minute or so. Christine asks if it's okay to add a duh. I mean, if you're writing, you can do that, but try to match it exactly just to give yourself some practice. All right, so let's go to the chat. Adam has, I need a beer or I'm gonna scream. So I need beer, not a beer. So I need beer or I'm gonna scream. I need beer or I'm gonna scream. Yep, so that one matches. Stu has I love you and I love your dog. So that matches as well. So good work there. Pierre has a man sat with his longtime friend. Whoops. Longtime. Yeah, that one works as well. Long time is one of those words that it feels like both are stressed, but the secondary stress is almost as strong as the first, but that definitely works. I lost my spot here. Brian has, I really don't care, just go away. I really, really would be a dumb duh. So that pattern doesn't quite match. I really don't care, just go away. I really don't care. See, care would be stressed. Just is kind of a non-meaning word that you would have stressed in this pattern. So that one doesn't quite match. And then we have J-Rock, all alone without you near me. So all alone. So the alone would be, this is unstressed. So alone, or alone. Yeah, alone is the dumb. So it's alone. So you actually, that doesn't match the pattern either. Let's see what Stephen has. I felt glad as my children skate. I felt glad as my children skate. Yep, that's good. Leslie has, my heart swelled at your funny tweet. Perfect. Yep, nice work. And then Lauren's was, I knew well where to plant my feet. Cold would be an extra syllable in there. So that would be not quite matching. Rosale has,
That's an error, scratch that out.
okay. So Hazeline has, the snow fell on an empty street, trickling down way beneath my feet. Trickling would be stressed, unstressed. So that doesn't quite match. Whoops, keeps moving. Trickling down. Yeah, so the first part doesn't quite match Hazeline, but then it does.
Page.
Yeah,
So,
Jay?
I was trying to stress the all, so all is stressed like the dumb, and then all alone was da dumb, like alone.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
all alone
Yeah, so alone.
without, oh, well, you're
Was-
adding an extra. So if you started here, all alone without you near, me is an extra syllable. So
Yeah.
if you did if you did cut the da, you're mostly there, and then you're actually moving this da to the end, is kind of what you're doing. So that's, yeah, that's, I mean, you matched from what you had said earlier, you would drop the, right? So you did match this, you just added an extra syllable at the end, which is an unstressed syllable that wouldn't carry meaning, right? So all alone without you near,
Yeah.
you don't necessarily need the me.
Right. I guess alone is da-dum, right?
Yes,
Okay.
because we don't
So,
say it alone, we say it
yeah,
alone.
alone. Right, right. So that's so the beat that you had was dum da dum da da dum da dum, right?
So if you have, we had da dum dum da da dum da dum.
Oh, you had dum dum da da dum da dum. I have it written wrong.
Yep. But yeah, I think you have the concept though. And if you are curious
Is
about how words should be stressed, you can look in the Webster's dictionary. Sometimes the online dictionaries don't show the stress patterns, so sometimes you actually have to go to the acoustic version, the actual book, um, and look up words to see what their stress patterns are. But that's kind of the way that you can figure out, stress patterns of how like language should be too.
I just wrote down. I wrote the rhythm wrong. You had it as dum dum da da dum da dum. Is that right?
Yep, it's da dum dum da da dum da dum. The snow fell on an empty street.
Okay. I wrote it wrong. All right, I got you. Thank you.
Ron says, my car slid on the slippery road. Yep. So Ron, that's right. Um, Robert has, I drove fast to the song's slow beat. The only thing that would be maybe different is slow is an adjective. So slow would a lot of times be stressed. So you may have it as dumb, dumb, dumb on the end. But very close, Robert, for sure. Definitely have the concept down. Um, so moving on to the next phase of this, I would like you to try writing down the stress pattern that you sense from this line, and see how this one, how you sense it and what the stress pattern would be. So write your own stress pattern and let's see what we get. All right, so we're getting some in the chat. Let me go back here. So Richard, you have dumb, da dum, da dum, da 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 dum. So dumb, da dum, dumb, da dum. So you're accenting me, Richard? run away with me into the sky. Da, da,
Yeah,
da.
I was kind of in my brain, it was like, run away with me into the sky.
Yeah.
I mean, when I deliver it, the me is a little less accented, but I think naturally it kind of like, if you're sticking in a very like duple meter minded sense, like it can have a beat. Consider that like beat, like downbeat 3 or downbeat 2 or 4, you know, it's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it as run away with me, maybe, but.
Well, I mean, this line, I kind of did this on purpose because when I was looking at how I would do it, it depends on what word you're stressing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like I don't think you would stress with, but I think you could stress me, and then I think you could also stress into, run away with me into the sky.
Yeah, and that was at first kind of my instinct, and then I thought a little more and kind of went to more of the me getting that. But I think Jay's did exactly the one you just mentioned too, where like into got that emphasis.
Yeah, so Jay has dumb, da dumb, da dumb, dumb, da dumb. So Jay's actually accenting dumb. It's hard I gotta move my chat screen so I can see this here. So run away with me into the sky. So I think Jay is actually accenting the with as well. Run away with me. No, he's doing me into the sky. So he's doing me and into.
Yes.
So yeah. So that's how you would, yep. Stu has da da dum da dum dum da da dum. Run away with me into the sky. Yep. So Stu has the run away with me into the sky. So yeah, that works as well. Steven has the dum or dum da dum da 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 dum da dum. Run away with me into the sky. So that kind of works too, the way that into is a weird word because you can kind of almost have it as into or into the sky. People pronounce it differently, but I think you guys are getting the concept for sure. Rizal says she wrote a line that says, when the moon is going to fall from the sky, she saw that it doesn't quite match. Christine has dum, 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 da, da, dum, which there's a lot of stress syllables. The pattern is a little bit different, Christine. Leslie has run away with me into the sky. Yep, dum da dum da dum da dum da dum. So I can definitely see how you came to that as well. Brian has that pattern too. And then JP is kind of like singing it, run away with me into the sky. The way that you sing it can be different, but where it's falling on beats will have the pattern. Robert has the dum or dum da dum da da dum da dum. Yep, that works. J Rock, you have dum da dum da da. Whoops, I lost my spot. Dum da dum da 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 dum da dum. Yep, that's right. So that's how others had it as well. And then Lauren has it as run away. So Lauren, you have the first syllable run you have as a unstressed syllable. That would actually be a stress syllable. So that one's a little bit off. Suzanne has dum da dum da da dum da da dum. Yep. Ron has dum da dum da dum da 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 dum. That works as well. Yeah, so you guys are getting the concept of this, right? And Pierre says there's lots of possibilities with this one. I myself debated on like what was I going to do with into. So I had run away with me into the sky. So dum da dum da da dum da da dum. But you guys had a small variation. Again, it depends on how you're accenting what you're trying to say. So now, instead of starting with actual words, let's start with a stress pattern and see if you can write 2 lines that match these patterns. So the first line is dum da da dum da da dum. The second line is da dum da dum da dum. So dum da da dum da da dum, da dum da dum da dum. So that's your rhythm, and see if you can write 2 lines that match these stress patterns. So we'll give you a little bit more time on this one, just to give you a chance to kind of think about it and repeat that rhythm to yourself and see if you can come up with the lines. All right, so we're starting to get some stuff in the chat here. Let's see. So Adam went first. You have "Don't ever tell me that crap again, you silly fool." I think that's close, but ever would be strong weak. So don't, it'd be dum dum duh. Don't ever tell me that crap again, you silly fool. Yeah, so close. You just had this syllable would be a stressed syllable with the word ever, because ever is a stress and a non-stress.
And there's no way in real conversation you wouldn't like yell ever.
What do you mean? Like you're not
No, I'm
stressing?
saying, no, I that's how wrong I was, because ever is probably the loudest thing that you would say in that sentence. I realized.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Like don't
Don't
ever.
ever. Yeah.
Yeah, right. but you were close. You got the concept. And I mean, no one's going to strike you with lightning if you're like a syllable or two off. Again, this is practice of just trying to understand how lines match each other and how you create patterns, right? And it helps you, especially if you're writing, if you're not a musician, writing to these patterns can help you give your lyrics some rhythm that a musician may have an easier time putting the words to music because you have a meter to it. So especially if you're quote unquote only a lyric writer, you know, think about how the flow is. And even for yourself, if like, let's say you're on an airplane and you don't have your instrument or something and you want to write a song, make some stress patterns and write lyrics to it, because then when you go back you'll be like, oh, there's actually kind of a flow to how the lyrics are flowing here, and I can more easily set that to music. Jay has, she seemed a sheep and was meek, but welled in her was rage. So she would technically not be stressed. So seemed would be a word or a verb. So it starts off not quite correct, Jay.
So I think it's funny because I feel like so much of this is contextual depending upon how we hear it. Because like for me, I hear she seemed a sheep and was meek, but welled up in her was rage. It's not like, you know,
But the way
there's
that
a
you,
set.
yeah, but the way that you just sang that, you said she seemed, so you went weak, strong, and this is going strong, weak, right? So the way that you even just sang it,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. Put it like that.
yeah, yeah. J-Rock has, I can see you watching me. I know that you're there on the other side of the screen. I see, that's the same thing that Jay just did as well. So I would usually be like, I can would be a weak strong, and this starts as strong weak. So I can see you watching me. So you have the, it's almost like you have it flipped where you're actually accenting the opposites of the I can see you. It would be more like weak, strong, strong, weak, strong, weak, weak. I can see you watching me. Uh da dum dum da dum da da would be more of like, so that doesn't quite match there. Brian has, why is it, whoops, it moved. Why is it you like to run away when we just talk? So that's kind of your, so Brian's kind of doing the same thing that J-Rock was doing, was the pronouns are being stressed. And it doesn't, the pattern doesn't quite match what's on the screen. Suzanne has moon in the sky, way up high, below the stars to tonight. Yeah, that's pretty close. That's good. Sing to the wind, my friend of voice. Sing to the wind, my friend. I think you missed a syllable there. A voice is power to mend. So I think you missed a syllable in the first line and then you added one in the second line there, Robert, but that was really close. Stu has, give me your warmth in the night and sing a song of love. Perfect. So Stu got that one. That's great. Then we have Leslie, fight if you can, if you must, or kiss me softly now. Yes. Yep. Leslie's got it too. And then Christine has, sunshine goes away today. I think we just sunshine, 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 sunshine. Yep, dum-da goes. I think the goes would be stressed, so that's just a little bit off. Away today, that's good. Our home. You're very close on the second line, Christine. I just think there might be I think leave, these two syllables are flipped. So you have it as dum da da dum da dum instead of da dum da dum da dum. And then Lauren has where we see. So see is technically a verb, so that one would be stress. So that's a little bit off, Lauren. Fields rest in green. The crops will grow in spring. The second line is good. There's a few little things in the first one that are a little bit off. And then Ron has once without fear, I could stand and love the man I am. Yes, Ron's got it. Perfect. Stephen has hold me so close in that way. It fills me full of love. Yeah, so Stephen, that's right. And then Grace has trees in the forest all fall. Believe in trees. Believe in trees forever. You have an extra syllable, but that's very close, Grace. Pierre has sing to me, hold me tight, babe. Cool. And know that I am here. Yes, Pierre's got that as well. Whoops. Lauren has where the far fields rest in green, the crops will grow in spring. Yes, that's better, Lauren. And then Jay, reattempt. Song set to claps in a storm, our hopes enforced for days. Yeah, I think you could debate on the set might be stressed, but yeah, that's much better, Jay, for sure. Awesome. So that's going to wrap up the exercises that I created for today, just based on timing and things like that too. So how do you guys feel that you'll use this going forward? Do you see yourself kind of thinking more consciously about sort of how your lyrics have rhythm, or how do you think this will help you going forward? I see some nodding, and anybody want to chat about what they think? Pierre.
Being a school teacher, of course, when you're talking about parts of speech at the beginning, saying, "Oh, I don't want to bog you down," it's so cool now that I will look at the way I use my parts of speech in each line that I write. You know what I mean? The tie-in and kind of analyzing. But like I say, like you've said, any workshop, the more you practice it, the more it'll become second nature. But tying in the parts of speech and the stressed and unstressed, and just kind of joining that, I think it's going to open up a lot of doors. And I promise I'll do it today. Because as a rule, when we walk out of the workshops, like, oh, great, and then put it away. I'm going to do it. I have time right now after we're off the call. So I like
awesome.
that, putting it together. Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us here for this workshop on at-home songwriting. Hopefully this is helpful for you. We'd love to meet you in the live workshops. Click the link in the description, and definitely watch some of the other videos here on the channel, because this whole channel is made to help you become a better songwriter. So we learn about process, information, education. We meet other songwriters. We get to meet you sometimes. So it's all fun, and it's all to help you be a better at-home songwriter. So thanks for joining, and let's head to the next video.